Then in the morning she said, "I think I can help, but it will be up to you now." She said, "You know, the fairies, these folk are great people of spells, but they are not able to create for themselves. So they have to steal things from others." Now, fairies like to steal things that are rare and unusual and special. So you have to find 2 things that are extraordinary, that will allow you first to get entrance into the fairy realms and then to be able to get your baby back. It's up to you. You must find those gifts that are to be given. So the girl set off, and she wandered back into the forest, looking for the path to that mountain which had been seen by the old gypsy woman. And she thought. She cast back in her mind to the memories of the stories, the myths that had been told to her as a child. And one myth somehow she remembered was that of a downy cloak. And then she remembered a golden harp. She couldn't remember the stories, but she remembered that these too were precious and extraordinary articles with great significance. So she had a plan. First of all, she went down to the cliffs, and there she found the old nests of birds, and she collected all the fine down that had been left behind when the babies had left their nests. She gathered a great pile, and then she took her auburn locks and she cut them, and then painstakingly she threaded each of the little feathers onto her hair until it had made a cloak, which when the breeze came along lifted and wafted. She very carefully placed it in a safe place, and then she went down to the sandy beach below, hunting, until she found the dried carcass of a seal, just the right shape to make her harp. She took it back, and with the strands of her hair, she strung the harp. And then she tuned it, and when she touched, the sound which arose brought the seagulls out of the sky, stopping their squawking to listen. Taking her 2 gifts, she made her way back to the path that was going to take her to the mountain in which the fairies met. And the old gypsy woman had told her that there was a special time, because now another fairy king was going to be crowned, so all the fairies would be gathered. And she'd also given her a little jar of salve. She said, "Rub this on your eyelids and it will help you to see." So that night, the moon was full. The maiden sat and waited, and suddenly, after she'd placed the salve on her eyes, the fairies began to troop. Strange creatures in green and gold. They trooped in what seemed to be a solid wall, but they disappeared. And then an old fairy came along, one of the stragglers, one of the last to enter. And the maiden stepped out from where she was hiding, and she wrapped the cloak around her shoulders. And the fairy said, "You human, what are you doing here? This is fairy realm. You should not be here." But just at that moment, a lovely breeze came along and lifted the cloak so it glistened. The fairy's attention was completely... "I want that! I want that cloak!" "You cannot have it," said the maiden. "I'll give you gold for it." "No," said the maiden. "I will only pass it to you if you allow me entrance into your realm." "Give it to me now." But the maiden held onto it closely. "No, when we are in the entrance." So all of a sudden a little flutter of lights came, and there was a door. When they entered in, the maiden passed the cloak over to the fairy lady. Now everyone had gathered round. "What's this human doing here?" But when the old fairy put the cloak around her shoulders, and it wafted, and they saw the glistening down, everyone's attention was taken. They all wanted it. "How much do you want?" And quickly the maiden made her way up where the newly crowned king of fairies was sitting on his throne. "What are you doing here?" said the king. But just at that moment, the maiden began to play her harp. She played an ancient Scottish tune, and everything went silent. The king of fairies was mesmerized by the sound. "I'll give you gold. Take these jewels. You can have what you want. Give me the harp." But the maiden began to play a strident, resonating sound, a sound of great authority. "No," she said, "I will only exchange this harp for my baby boy." Now to the king, a newly crowned king of fairies, a human baby was a precious gift. So he didn't want to part with the child. But the sound of her harp was so strident, so powerful, that finally the child was bought. And it was not until the very moment that her babe was back in her arms that she let the harp slip out of her arms and down to the floor, where the fairy king picked it up and began to play a lilting fairy tune. All of the fairies gathered around to hear the amazing sound. So the maiden, now carrying her babe in her arms, was able quickly to leave that realm. She hastened through the forest and made her way back to the house of